What if the very thing I trusted to keep me strong after 60 was quietly failing me? That question hit me one morning when I finished my usual walk and noticed something unsettling. My legs felt heavy. Body was telling a different story. I remember standing still at the end of that walk and feeling slightly off, like my balance needed a second to catch up. Nothing dramatic, no fall, just a subtle instability that stayed with me the rest of the day. Later, climbing the stairs, my legs felt weaker than they should have. Not painful, just unreliable. That was the moment something clicked. Walking was keeping me moving, but it wasn't rebuilding what age was quietly taking away. Over time, I started noticing patterns. Morning stiffness that took longer to fade. Legs that felt cold and sluggish at night. A strange fatigue that didn't match the effort I was putting in. I wasn't sick. I wasn't injured. I was just losing circulation efficiency, strength, and control in ways walking never addressed. And that realization was uncomfortable, because walking had become my safety net. What really shook me was understanding that movement alone isn't enough after 60. The body changes. Muscles, responsible for stability, weaken. Blood flow needs deeper activation. Balance requires specific signals. Walking is repetitive, predictable, safe, yes. But it stops challenging the systems that protect independence. That's when the fear crept in. Not fear of aging, but fear of losing control. Fear of one small misstep changing everything. I started paying attention to how I moved during the day. Standing up from a chair, turning too quickly, walking on uneven ground. Those moments revealed more than miles ever did. My body wasn't broken. It was understimulated in the areas that mattered most for life after 60. And that realization opened the door to something I hadn't considered before. Because what I discovered next wasn't about doing more. It was about doing something different, something simple, something that directly spoke to circulation, strength, and balance in a way walking never could. And once I felt the first change, I knew I couldn't ignore it anymore. Before I continue, let me pause for a moment because this part matters more than most people realize. What I'm sharing here isn't entertainment. It's not motivation. It's understanding how the body really works after 60 and why so many well-intentioned habits quietly stop working. If you're still watching, it tells me you're not just curious. You care about staying independent, stable, and strong in real life. If any part of this story sounds familiar, I want you to engage with it. Leave a comment below and tell me your age and whether walking still feels enough for your legs, balance, or circulation. Reading those comments helps this conversation reach the people who need it most, and it also tells me what you're experiencing right now in your own body. If this perspective is making you rethink what movement really means after 60, tap the like button so this message doesn't get buried. And if you want to keep learning simple, practical ways to protect your circulation, strength, and balance, without medication or aggressive training, subscribe to the channel. That way, you don't miss what comes next. Because in the next part, I'll talk about something most people never connect to walking. The quiet sensations in the legs that signal deeper circulation problems long before anything serious happens. And once you understand that, everything changes. What surprised me most wasn't pain. It was discomfort without a name. A quiet, persistent sensation in my legs that I couldn't point to, but couldn't ignore either. They felt heavy by the afternoon, slightly swollen by the evening, and strangely tired even on days when I hadn't done much. I kept telling myself it was normal after 60. Everyone feels this, right? That's what I heard. That's what I wanted to believe. But the body has its own language, and mine was speaking through sensation. Sitting for too long made my legs feel thick and sluggish. Standing up after dinner, the first few steps felt uncertain, as if circulation needed time to wake up. At night, there was a dull fatigue that made me shift positions, searching for relief. Not pain, just unease. And because it wasn't dramatic, I ignored it for far too long. What I later understood is that poor circulation doesn't announce itself loudly. It whispers. Blood flow becomes less efficient. Muscles don't get oxygen the way they used to. The legs lose that light, responsive feeling. Walking helped on the surface, but it never reached deep enough to change what was happening underneath. The same pathways were being used again and again, while others slowly went dormant. I started noticing how my legs responded to simple things. Cold floors felt colder. Long car rides left them stiff and numb. Even small hills felt more demanding than they should. These were not signs of weakness. They were signs of reduced flow and underused muscle systems. And once I saw that, I couldn't unsee it. The most unsettling part was realizing how common this is. So many people over 60 talk about heavy legs, tired calves, swelling by the ankles, but treat it as an unavoidable part of aging. It isn't framed as something you can influence. Yet circulation is movement dependent, and not all movement sends the same signal to the body. That's when I understood why walking alone wasn't changing these sensations. It kept me active, but it didn't challenge balance, posture, or the muscle pumps responsible for moving blood upward. My legs were moving, but they weren't, being trained to support circulation, strength, and control together. And then came the thought that changed everything. If discomfort is information, what was my body preparing me for next? Because the next issue that appeared wasn't about heaviness at all. It was about something far more unsettling: balance. I didn't fall, and that's exactly why it scared me. It happened during an ordinary moment, turning slightly while standing, nothing fast, nothing careless. For a split second, my body hesitated. My feet were there, my legs were there, but my balance lagged behind. It felt like my system needed an extra beat to organize itself. Most people would shrug that off. I didn't. After that, I started noticing similar moments. Reaching down to tie my shoes, stepping off a curb, walking on an uneven sidewalk. Tiny delays, tiny corrections, always subtle. But together, they told a clear story. My balance wasn't gone, but it wasn't automatic anymore. And that's dangerous, because balance is what you stop thinking about right before it fails. What many people don't realize is that balance isn't just strength. It's communication between muscles, joints, and the nervous system. And after 60, that communication weakens if it's not challenged correctly. Walking in a straight line, at the same pace, on the same surface, doesn't ask much from balance. It keeps you moving forward, but it doesn't train control. The fear didn't come from falling. It came from imagining what a fall would take away. Independence, confidence, the ability to live without hesitation. I'd seen what happens when one fall turns into caution, then restriction, then dependence. I didn't want that path. And yet, I could feel myself slowly drifting toward it without realizing how. I began to understand that balance loss doesn't start with dramatic instability. It starts with reduced feedback from the feet, slower reactions in the legs, and muscles that no longer respond together. Walking never forced those systems to wake up. In fact, it allowed them to remain asleep. That realization changed how I looked at movement. I stopped asking, "Am I active?" and started asking, "Am I training control?" Because balance isn't maintained by repetition. It's maintained by challenge, safe challenge, intentional challenge. And that's when I tried something different. Not harder, not longer, just smarter. One simple movement that immediately made my legs feel more alive, more responsive, more connected to the ground. I wasn't expecting much, but what I felt afterward was impossible to ignore. I didn't find this exercise in a gym. I didn't need equipment, instructions, or a routine overhaul. What I noticed first was how ordinary it looked, almost too simple to matter, and that's why I nearly dismissed it. But the moment I tried it, something changed in my legs that walking had never produced. Within seconds, I felt warmth spreading downward, not the surface kind, but a deeper sensation like circulation finally reaching places it hadn't touched in years. My calves engaged differently. My thighs felt awake instead of passive. And most surprising of all, my feet felt more connected to the ground, not heavier, more present. That was new. What struck me was how intentional the movement felt. Unlike walking, where the body falls into autopilot, This required awareness. Weight shifting, controlled tension, small stabilizing muscles waking up and working together. I wasn't just moving forward. I was training my legs to manage pressure, balance, and blood flow at the same time. After the first few days, I noticed subtle but undeniable changes. Standing up felt easier. My legs no longer felt dull in the evening. There was less of that heavy sensation that used to creep in after sitting. Even my posture felt more upright without me forcing it. That told me something important. This movement wasn't just helping circulation. It was restoring strength and coordination where walking never reached. What makes this exercise different is that it activates the muscle pumps responsible for pushing blood back up against gravity. It challenges balance without risk, and it sends a clear signal to the nervous system that control still matters. Walking doesn't do that. Walking repeats what you already know how to do. This retrains what the body is slowly forgetting. There was also an emotional shift I didn't expect. Confidence. Not motivation, but trust in my body. When your legs respond quickly and feel stable, fear loosens its grip. You stop bracing for missteps. You move with intention again. That's when I realized something critical. It wasn't about adding intensity. It was about activating what had been neglected. And inside that movement, there was one small detail that made all the difference. Miss it, and the exercise becomes ordinary. Get it right, and everything changes. At first, I thought the exercise itself was doing all the work. But after a few sessions, I noticed something interesting. On the days I felt the biggest improvement, my posture was different. My movement felt smoother, more controlled. That's when I realized it wasn't just about doing the movement. It was about how I was doing it. The adjustment was subtle, almost invisible to anyone watching. But inside my body, it changed everything. I stopped rushing through the motion. I slowed it down just enough to feel where my weight was traveling. From the heel, through the midfoot, into the toes. My core engaged without effort. My hips stabilized naturally. Suddenly, my legs weren't acting alone. My whole body was participating. That single change rewired how I moved. My shoulders stopped collapsing forward. My head aligned naturally over my spine. Balance became something I felt, not something I worried about. Walking afterward felt different, lighter, more deliberate. I wasn't compensating anymore. What I understood in that moment is that stability doesn't come from strength alone. It comes from coordination, from muscles firing in the right order, from posture that allows circulation to flow freely instead of being compressed. Walking rarely corrects posture. It often reinforces bad habits. This movement exposed them and fixed them quietly. I began noticing how often I had been leaning slightly forward, relying on momentum instead of control. That's common after 60. It's subtle, but it steals balance and increases fall risk. Once the adjustment clicked, my body corrected itself without effort. That's when confidence returned. Not forced confidence, real confidence rooted in physical control. Even standing still felt different. I wasn't shifting weight unconsciously. My feet felt grounded. My legs felt strong but relaxed. That combination is rare, and it came from paying attention to a detail most people overlook. That's also when I realized this wasn't something you do once and forget. It had to become part of daily life. The real power of this movement wasn't intensity, it was consistency. And the way I fit it into my routine made all the difference. Once I understood the movement and that small adjustment, the next question was obvious. How do I make this part of my life without turning it into a chore? I didn't want another routine that felt heavy or demanding. I wanted something that worked with my day, not against it. And that's exactly why this stuck. I started doing it at moments that already existed. Right after, waking up, while my body was still stiff and quiet. A few controlled repetitions were enough to send circulation into my legs before the day even started. The difference was immediate. My feet warmed faster. My steps felt steadier. It was like my body switched on instead of slowly dragging itself into motion. Some days I repeated it in the evening. Not as exercise, but as reset. After sitting, after dinner, before winding down. Instead of collapsing into the couch with heavy legs, I used the movement to drain that tension. Blood flow improved, swelling eased. Sleep came easier because my legs didn't feel restless or fatigued anymore. What surprised me was how little time it required. Minutes, not sessions, no sweat, no soreness, just activation. That's the key most people miss. After 60, the goal isn't exhaustion, it's stimulation. You want to remind your muscles, joints, and nervous system how to cooperate. This movement does that without impact or strain. Because it felt safe, I stayed consistent. Consistency changed everything. Strength didn't return overnight, but control did. Balance improved quietly. I noticed it when standing on one leg to put on pants, when turning quickly, when walking on uneven ground without thinking twice. Those are the moments that matter. I also noticed something emotional shift. I stopped planning my movements around fear. I trusted my legs again. And trust creates freedom. That's the real value of a daily habit like this. It protects independence without demanding sacrifice. And then came the moment that confirmed everything. A simple situation that used to make me cautious suddenly felt effortless. That's when I realized how far things had come and what this movement had truly restored. The real proof didn't show up during the exercise. It showed up in ordinary moments I used to think nothing about. Standing up without pushing off, turning quickly when someone called my name, walking across uneven ground without scanning every step. Those small things told me more than any mirror ever could. My legs felt responsive again, not stronger in a dramatic way, but reliable. When I shifted my weight, my body answered immediately. Circulation felt smoother, especially in the evenings when heaviness used to settle in. Balance wasn't something I managed anymore. It was something that happened naturally, quietly, without effort. That's when I understood the difference between being active and being in control. What changed most was my relationship with movement. I stopped moving cautiously. I stopped compensating. I stopped bracing. Confidence returned, not as an idea, but as a physical sensation. When your body reacts the way you expect it to, fear fades. And when fear fades, life opens back up. I also noticed how posture and breathing improved without conscious correction. When circulation flows better and stabilizing muscles do their job, the body aligns itself. Walking felt smoother, standing felt lighter, even fatigue changed. It wasn't the draining kind anymore. It was the kind that comes from using your body well. What surprised me most was realizing how close I had been to accepting decline as normal. Not because it was inevitable, but because no one explained what was missing. Walking kept me moving forward, but this movement gave me control, stability, and circulation together. That combination is what protects independence after 60. And once you feel that shift, you can't ignore it. You start paying attention to how you move, how you stand, how you support yourself through the day. Not with anxiety, but with awareness. That awareness becomes freedom. There's one more thing to share, especially for those who stayed with me through this entire story. It's about how to move forward from here and how to make sure this progress doesn't stop. If you made it all the way to the end of this video, that tells me something important. You're not here by accident. You're here because you care about staying strong, balanced, and independent as the years move forward. And that mindset alone already puts you ahead of most people. If this story reflected something you've been feeling in your own body, I want you to leave a comment below and write, control. That one word helps this message reach others who need it, and it also tells me you're choosing awareness over decline. Make sure to subscribe to the channel if you want more simple, realistic ways to protect your circulation, balance, and mobility after 60 without medication or aggressive workouts. And if this video helped you see movement differently, give it a like so this conversation doesn't disappear. Right now, there's another video appearing on your screen that continues exactly where this one ends. It goes deeper into how to keep your legs responsive and your balance sharp as you age. Click it and keep moving forward with confidence.